There was a time when the Brown family was the symbol of unity, love, and bold defiance of traditional norms. At the center of this sprawling, unorthodox home was Kody Brown, a man with 4 wives and 18 children, each relationship constructed painstakingly into what was once regarded as a harmonious, plural marriage. For years, sister wives flung open the door to their existence, inviting the world in to see what it was like to live in a family that bent the rules. Laughter-filled rooms shared, children played alongside each other, and the women, as disparate as they were, vowed to create a joint life under one family banner. They possessed something precious, something unbreakable, or so it appeared. But behind the smiles and flashes of cameras, something sinister was quietly germinating. When season 19 hit the airwaves in 2024, the illusion had shattered. The picture of a powerful, cohesive family had turned to ashes. 3 of Kody's 4 wives, Christine, Janelle, and Mary, had left, each exit more emotional, more breathtaking than the previous one. What was left was a shadow of the colorful family fans used to look up to. Kody and Robyn, the final survivors, were now in a marriage that was, in every practical sense, monogamous, and maybe not by design. Gone were the family group excursions. Gone were the dinner table gatherings. What remained was a house full of emptiness and an unanswered question in the air. How did it end like this? Robyn, who was once among a larger sisterhood, is now alone, and she aches from it, not only in her own soul, but in the eyes of her children. Where there was once laughter with a dozen siblings and step-siblings, now there's reserve. There's distance. There's the empty gnawing of being forgotten. She has spoken out, and what she has said hurts. Her children have felt abandoned by the very brothers and sisters they loved as best friends once. Birthdays come and go without a phone call. Holidays go by without a visit. The ties that used to keep the Brown children together have come undone in silence. But the question is it really the result of adult choices, or is something else happening beneath the surface? Robyn is heartbroken. She talks with a soft urgency, desperate mother wanting to know how everything fell apart so fast. Her children, who were once members of a tribe, now look around and notice only vacant seats, unread texts, and memories of the past. And whereas Robyn laments the breakdown of that broader family, Kody undergoes his own reckoning. The man who once commanded a household of 4 wives now must face a new form of solitude, a complicated emotional aftermath that no form of rationalization can wholly explain away. All of the wives departed with her own tale, her own wounds. Christine was the first to leave, and she ignited the flame that would later ignite a chain effect. Her move affected the entire family and inspired others to confront their realities. Janelle soon escaped, desperate to find serenity beyond the confines of a troubled marriage. And lastly, Mary, whose relationship with Kody had been gradually deteriorating, opted for loneliness over a marriage that felt unreal. And yet, Robyn remained. Some attribute it to loyalty, others to fear. But they all agree on one thing. She did not stay for Kody alone. She stayed for the dream. The dream that perhaps, somehow, the pieces could be picked up, that perhaps the family could mend. But the children's silence, particularly hers, speaks volumes. Her children get to observe their siblings grow up on the social media screen, far away from them, as strangers. The warmth is lost. The contact? Broken. And Robyn can't help but question whether or not this emotional distance is on purpose. Have they been discarded? Or are people just too hurt to reach over the gap? In the shadows of what has passed, she clings to a glimmer of hope. Hope that one day the phone will ring, that one of the children will appear at the door, that the family, despite it all, can come back together. But with each passing season, the hope fades, the gulf widens, and the Brown family, once a home founded in faith and integrity, now feels like a cautionary tale. Was this the predestined destiny of polygamy in the spotlight, or was it a result of deeper faults, concealed until they could no longer be left unseen? As the new season progresses, viewers are left waiting with held breath. Will the wounds start to mend, or continue to deepen beyond resolution? Will Robyn's kids be drawn back into the arms of their siblings, or will they stay on the outside, observing a family they once knew distance themselves further? The tension grows not through scandal, but through silence. Not through arguments, but through absence. And it is through that silence that a different kind of story is unfolding, one not about plural marriage. But about the vulnerability of love, the grief of releasing, and the courage it takes to remain when all the rest have left. During the initial days of the Sister Wives' Tale, the Brown family lived a picture of togetherness seldom witnessed. Kody Brown, a man who was married to 4 women and had increasingly more children, was the patriarch of a plural family living under one extended roof. The wives each had her own realm, her own wing in their large communal house, yet the family remained close-knit. The kids lived side by side, siblings in every possible meaning of the term, sharers of meals, holidays, memories, and moments that formed a lifetime of connection. But for Robyn's kids, that was never their own to enjoy. They came along just as change was starting to blow. Robyn, Kody's 4th wife, brought children of her own from a prior marriage into the family. And though Kody welcomed them as his own, the family dynamic had already shifted. Soon after Robyn arrived, everything changed, dramatically and irrevocably. The Browns decided, in a move that was widely criticized, to relocate from Utah. Mentioning concerns for their legal future and increasing scrutiny, they disrupted their existence and broke into several individual homes. That one large, lively home, full of laughter and life, erupted into pieces, and with it, the possibility for Robyn's children to become part of the family like the others was lost. Maybe lost forever. The closeness that the older children had experienced couldn't be replaced. The shared bedrooms, the wee-hour conversations, the feeling of growing up together in one house, all of these were gone. And with them, an unspoken but real distance crept in. Kody's vision of a single family began to fracture. Even though the family had always claimed to be one, the practicality of living apart was disastrous. With Kody pulled thin than ever before, shuttling from dwelling to dwelling, juggling 4 homes, tensions crept in. And for much of the children, particularly the older ones, the warning signs were clear. They began noticing something disturbing. Kody was spending more and more time with Robyn and her kids. It wasn't something she imagined. It became a source of pain. While the other children spent less time with their dad, Robyn's home became the center of his universe. The resentment was impossible to overlook. The older kids felt like strangers in their own household, observing from afar as their dad spent his time and energy on one limb of the family tree. It only became more bitter throughout the COVID-19 crisis. Kody and Robyn opted to stay extremely cautious at the peak of the pandemic. They kept social interactions to a minimum, imposed strict health measures, and made it plainly understood that only those who adhered to their parameters to the very letter were welcome into their bubble. This move, however presented as one of caution, created an even bigger rift between Kody and his other kids. The older children, most of whom were already living on their own by this time, couldn't or wouldn't meet Kody and Robyn's stringent expectations. And so the visits ceased. The phone calls slowed to a trickle. The emotional divide grew, and ties that were already tenuous began to snap completely. Over time, Kody drifted away from a number of his kids. Relationships that had once seemed permanent became strained, distant, and in a few instances, completely severed. The heartache of this alienation became horribly apparent in 2024. That year, the Brown family was shaken to its core by an unfathomable tragedy: the death of 25-year-old Garrison Brown, one of Kody's children with Janelle. But what made this loss so much more painful was the fact that, when Garrison died, he and his dad were no longer on speaking terms. Not a sentence, not a text, not even a farewell. The agony of that silence remains. Kody's not being around Garrison in the last few months came to represent a disturbing reminder of how far apart the family had come. And for many, it posed a question that persists today. How did a family that seemed so full of love end up so disconnected, so divided, so fractured? Kody's children, although legally adopted by him, were never accepted in the same way by the remainder of the family, not because of who they are, but because of when and how they came into the picture. They didn't have the childhood memories. They didn't grow up within that initial single home. And by the time they got there, the foundation had already begun to deteriorate. There were no communal snow days, no school pickups together, no random sibling bedlam in the corridors. In their place, walls, both literal and figurative. And although some of the children made efforts to construct bridges, the gap was too wide for many of those relationships to take shape. And thus, Robyn's children were in an uncomfortable, agonizing position. They were members of the family by name, but not necessarily by heart. Although Kody attempted to play the role of the glue, he too frequently played the wedge. His obvious favoritism, whether done out of malice or not, only breeding resentment and suspicion. Now, as the cameras keep rolling and Sister Wives heads into its later seasons, the devastation is apparent for all to witness. The once proud family that boasted of being together is broken. Kody and Robyn, now effectively in a monogamous relationship, gaze out upon a horizon of relationship wreckage, and at the heart of it all are the children, those who were raised together and those who weren't, those who were left behind, and those who never had the opportunity to be a part of the real family before everything went wrong. The most chilling aspect of this tale isn't what was written, it's what wasn't. The forgotten birthdays, the unreturned calls, the meals with only partial invites, the lengthy silences in the middle of interviews where love once glowed. There's no evil mastermind in this tale, only a group of difficult decisions, lost moments, and growing distances that no one was able to fill. But one question is left. Is it ever possible for a family to put themselves back together when the pieces no longer fit as neatly together as they once did? Only time will tell, and until then, all we can do is observe, hiding our breath, hoping that what remains of the Brown family can be found coming out of the darkness and into the light. For years, the Brown family stood as a symbol of unconventional commitment: 4 wives, 1 husband, and a collective life forged on faith, resilience, and the belief that love could exist beyond traditional bounds. But when the COVID-19 pandemic struck, what began as a health crisis quickly became a crucible, exposing cracks in the family's foundation that had long been hidden beneath the surface. And for Kody Brown, the repercussions were much worse than he ever could have believed. It started with Christine. She had swallowed her misery for years in silence. As Kody's 3rd wife, she had felt ignored for a long time, existing in the shadow of other marriages, seeing her relationship with her husband slowly shrink away, but it was the pandemic that brought everything crystal clear. When Kody and Robyn closed their circle and limited regular visits with the other wives, something broke inside Christine. The loneliness, the special treatment, the constant sense of living outside, looking in. She knew she had had enough. After 27 years of marriage and having 6 children together, Christine took the most courageous step of her life. She walked away. She didn't simply leave a man. She left a way of life. One that no longer benefited her. One that, in her own words, no longer made her feel loved or wanted. But Christine's departure was just the start. The waves of her leaving were felt far and wide, particularly by Kody's second wife, Janelle. For almost 3 decades, she had been the unobtrusive, steady presence in the Brown family. Level-headed and independent, with a fierce devotion to her children, Janelle had put up with a lot over the years. But even her patience had its limits. Sleep or how holidays are divided. It's so much more than that. It's emotional bandwidth. She was truthful. She didn't have the appropriate tools back then to deal with the jumbled emotions that arose, particularly when Robyn came into the picture. One of those emotions she struggled with was jealousy, and it goes even further if you take into account their religious upbringing. Mary broke it down that in their fundamentalist Mormon faith, jealousy was nearly considered a moral sin, something to be ashamed of. You weren't supposed to feel jealous, and if you did, you had to hide it deep. You had to pretend it didn't exist if you wanted to be considered a good person. That's what she learned. That being righteous was about concealing your discomfort. But when you're human and feelings of jealousy are real and powerful, what do you do with them when your own faith tells you to shove them down? That was the internal conflict Mary experienced, attempting to manage a plural marriage, coping with favoritism, and dealing with feelings she wasn't supposed to have. It was all suppressed for years. And year by year, that repression of emotion just became distance. And eventually, detachment. So, when you consider all of that, it's understandable why it all fell apart the way it did. This wasn't about who was spending more time with Kody. This was about long-standing emotional imbalance, repressed pain, and a system that had very little space for open emotional healing. It's easy to watch from the outside and say, well, Robyn got all the love. But from the inside? From Mary's perspective, it wasn't that simple. It was a mix of broken expectations, emotional struggle, religious pressure, and years of trying to make peace with something that never felt peaceful. And that's what makes this whole story so layered and so human. Now here's something incredibly strong that Mary posted, and in all honesty, it's something that so many can understand. She was like, "Now I get that jealousy is fine." Let that sink in. After all those years of living in a plural marriage with the weight of religious expectation, striving to be what she believed she needed to be, she finally saw that jealousy, that raw, awkward feeling we're all trained to get around, is indeed a signpost. It's not something to be ashamed of. It's a guide. She said, it actually can be used as a guide. And that right there, that's growth. That's insight. Because for so long, jealousy was something she believed made her bad, something she was supposed to stuff down deep and conceal. But now she realizes differently. She realizes that being jealous doesn't make you wrong. It makes you human. Speaking of Kody, she was candid about how that dynamic went down between them. She explained, "I'm human. I'm going to get jealous. He's human. He's going to not know how to deal with a woman's jealousy. And isn't that just real?" It's not about blaming or defending. It's about 2 imperfect people struggling to figure out something incredibly hard with nearly no emotional map. She remembered one instance when Kody would say, "If you're fine with them joining the family, why are you jealous? Why are you struggling?" And her response now makes complete sense. She explained, "Well, 1, I'm human. 2, I didn't get that it's okay to be jealous. I felt like I was a bad person for feeling that way." That moment right there, so many of us viewers experienced that feeling. Because how many of us feel something so deeply, only to then be ashamed of feeling it? It's this double emotional weight. You are in pain, and then you are punishing yourself for hurting. Mary's journey through jealousy and emotional self-discovery is something the show never fully explored until now. And the reason it hits so hard is because it's coming from a place of years of keeping quiet, of trying to live up to an ideal that was never sustainable. And while we're talking about long journeys, let's not forget, Sister Wives has been on the air for 19 seasons. It's one of TLC's longest-running shows. It's not just a reality series. It's a chronicle of a real family that opened their doors to the world year after year, season after season. It began in 2010. Hard to believe, right? That was more than a decade ago. We've seen this family grow, change, splinter, and attempt to rebuild since then. We have seen highs and lows, babies born, marriages strained, children coming of age and flying the coop. One of Kody's daughters, Gwendolyn, recently spoke out about what it was like to grow up in front of the cameras. She stated that the experience of being filmed so much actually affected their lives. And that's something we don't discuss enough. Because while we're all watching and reacting to each episode for the Brown kids, this was their actual life, their childhood, their struggles,